Okay, cool. Anyways, first of all, it's so nice to meet all of you guys. I want to thank you guys for having me here tonight. I'm honestly I'm also a student and I'm also just figuring things out in the industry. So I hope some of my insight is useful to you. And now I'm gonna share my screen. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Emma. I'm a VisDev artist and character designer, and right now I'm currently a VisDev artist at Sony Pictures Animation. So, a little bit about me. I'm currently a fourth year student at USC. I'm studying animation and digital arts. So right now in my senior year, I'm kind of like working on my thesis. I'm part-time student and then I'm part-time biz dev at Sony Pictures. I'm from California, Thousand Oaks, California. If anyone even knows where that is, it's just like a freaking suburb. My pronouns are she, her, and I want to share a fun fact about me, which is that I have a high score of 5.6 million in Subway servers. Like, I know, like, so cool. I know. Anyways, so I want to talk a little bit about why I even decided to go into animation and visual development, since Nathan has kind of informed me that a lot of people in this club are really interested in exploring that pathway as a career. So when I was like a kid, I just always really loved drawing and like watching anime. I probably watched like way too much anime and like no unsu like I was completely unsupervised screen time. So I probably shouldn't have been like 10 years old watching Attack on Titan, but I was, and it really inspired me. And like a lot of Asian like children of Asian parents, I kind of didn't feel like art was a plausible career for me. And so I spent a lot of time in high school preparing, doing the whole Asian kid resume grind. I was intending to go into poli sci, but I kind of pivoted midway through the pandemic, my pandemic years, because I just kind of felt like I would be the most happiest if I gave myself a chance to pursue what I actually love. So, that's kind of a little bit late to start preparing your portfolio as a high school student. So I really rushed to somewhat make like a decent portfolio. And I ended up getting into a couple of different art schools. And in the end, I decided to go with USC. Which I kind of want to talk about a little bit since we're all kind of in the same boat here. You guys being from UMich, another like large research university that happens to have a strong art program. So a little bit of solidarity between us. So as someone who has worked in the industry, conversed with a lot of people who went to like Cal Arts and Art Center and stuff, I've picked up just a lot of like notable differences between the two. And I'll kind of go over like what the strengths and the weaknesses are. So I found that like going to a conservatory style school like Art Center or Cal Arts or Ringling is really great for really surrounding yourselves in an art environment. You're going to get like a really specialized art environment that you might not be able to find at a normal university. And there's very little emphasis on GEs. So you're not really being academically challenged as much as if you went to a research university like UMich or USC. And sometimes they can have stronger connections and name recognition. Like when I when I interned at DreamWorks, the amount of people who just automatically assumed that I was from Art Center was kind of insane. Like if you go to one of those like large art schools, it kind of just the name recognition kind of comes with it. But that isn't always the most helpful thing in breaking an industry and getting your portfolio. It can be a plus, but it isn't always going to be the thing that like boosts you up more than people think. So for me, what I've learned is that I go to a non-art school. I go to USC, which I'm in the technically in the film school, the universe or the School of Cinematic Arts. And I've kind of found that like there's a there like you can find your community anywhere. So the art communities are a lot smaller and we oftentimes have to seek each other out versus if I went to like Cal Arts, like everyone is an artist. But to me, I kind of feel like that made my experience special in a way too, because I got to really choose my community, choose who like the artists I was inspired by and spent my time with. At the same time, there's just such a large diversity of people that I'm sure you guys have experienced as well that you may not be able to experience at a highly specialized art school. And that can also be highly inspirational. But the downside of that is I found that the classes aren't as specialized. Sometimes when it comes to like a specialized skill like VisDev or storyboarding, you kind of hit the ceiling a lot faster when it comes to the kind of classes that are offered. And so I found that a lot of the people that succeed a lot at non-art schools are the people that kind of extrapolate the resources. So the people that take all the classes that their school has to offer, and then when they find that they've exhausted those resources, they go and seek out external mentorships or internships if they're able to, or like take online classes like warrior painters or like schoolism and stuff. So ultimately, I would just want to talk about this a little bit because I think it's having worked at like these large studios, it's kind of uncommon to meet people who go to a non-art school and break into the industry, but it's not as uncommon as you think it is because a lot of people don't even major in art when they break into the industry. There's just a huge opportunity for people to be self-taught. And I think in some ways I found that the animation industry exhibits like a meritocracy more than other industries because as long as your art is good and speaks for itself, I found that there are people who will take notice in you. And for me, I ultimately chose like I had the opportunity to go to an art school, but I for myself specifically wanted to go to a non-art school because I still wanted to explore like so many different facets of like animation and education. Like the the Asian part of me still wanted to be an academic weapon, even though I don't even check my GPA anymore because it doesn't even matter. And I still wanted a traditional college experience. So that's just for me. I don't regret it at all. I would do it all over again. And for me personally at USC, like I won't say that it's the same thing as going to like any other school because they do have a lot of money that goes towards the arts. USC is like kind of special in that way. So I think the benefit for me, especially going to a school in California where the industry is based, is that you have a lot of very strong professors because they're teaching professors. And I would honestly, that's something I would recommend in general is whether you're looking to take a school or a class at school or a class outside of school, you should be learning from people who are in the industry because the industry changes so rapidly. I have professors who are, a little bit on the older side, kind of retired, were working for Disney in like the 80s and 90s, and they give like shit advice. They're like, oh, as long as you go to the studio and hang around, they'll give you a job. I'm like, that's not how that happens anymore. Like that, you can't even get into a studio without a badge. Like, anyways, old people, right? So sorry, not to bash old people. There's a wealth of knowledge that all people have to offer. Anyway, so like there's a lot of career opportunities that come from just being in California. For going to a school like USC, they have this thing called Studio Day where you're able to meet recruiters at different studios, and that might be a lot harder to do if you go somewhere geographically far from California because those studios just don't have the resources or the energy to send a recruiter to somewhere like I don't know, like Nevada, right? So that's the plus side of being able to go to a school like USC, but it's not like entirely impossible to break into the industry if you go to like a school that's geographically farther away. Because I have so many friends within the industry that went to schools that were like all the way across the country. And I think that again speaks to the fact that your work will oftentimes speak for itself. And I think something that might resonate a lot with you guys is like at USC, at some point, I felt like I really exhausted all of the VisDev education there. Like from the very beginning, going to college, I kind of always knew I wanted to be a VisDev artist. And at some point, there stopped being like a bunch of high-level classes that I could take to help with my portfolio. And I think that is, like I said before, the drawback of going to a school that's not a specialized art school. Like, luckily for me, I was able to get an internship around the time that I was feeling that way. But I had friends who felt the exact same way as me, and the way they remedied that was by seeking outside mentorships with people within the industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that because it's a lot more accessible than you think. And like I said before, I think going to USC had a larger diversity of people and disciplines like outside of art, but also within art, like within animation. There's so many disciplines of like interactive media and live action film production that I'm so glad that I learned about that I probably wouldn't have been able to fully encompass myself in if I had chosen to go to like a very specialized art community. Um, And this is no art center hate. I'm not gonna like bash on art center or anything because it's a great school and I have a lot of friends that went to art center. But like if I had gone to art center, I'd be like I'd probably be a way better artist, but I'd be way more miserable because I'm gonna de-influence you guys a little bit on what it's like to go to those schools because the curriculum is oftentimes so rigorous that I've heard stories of people literally being like walking zombies, like going to their labs and just like sleeping in there because the school really forces you to like pit yourself against other students. And, what improved my art the most was being around artists that mocked me per se, but like people who are better than me. Like I'll be like point blank about it. Like people who are better than me and showed me that there's so much more to improve. You don't get anything by being, oh, I'm sorry guys, my monitor just shut off for a second. You don't get anything by being the best artist in a room ever. Surround yourself with people who are better than you, and those are the people that help you grow. And I think healthy competition is good, but the best thing is to have people that are there to inspire you. And that's why I think for me personally, like I don't think it in the end it really mattered what school I chose to go to as long as I found a community that did that for me. And honestly, it kind of sounds like you guys have that here at the DigiPaint Club. So that's so wonderful. So I also want to talk a little bit about my art struggles, specifically now that I've had an opportunity to work in the industry. I it has not been an easy road for me. Like there have been so many roadblocks for me getting to this point, and I kind of want to take you guys like year by year. So when I was like in freshman year, when I first like matriculated, I was just like straight depressed all the time. Um, like something that happened to me, and I don't know if any of you guys can relate to this, but I was learning so much about art that my artistic sensibilities were improving faster than my technical skill could keep up. So I had all of this knowledge about like art principles and what to do, but my actual technical skill just wasn't there yet. And it made me feel like I was literally the worst artist ever. And I would play Stardew Valley for like 12 hours a day to cope with it. Um, um, but like time heals all wounds or whatever. And I kind of started to improve. And at some point during my sophomore year, I made it to the final round of an internship at Titnas for character design. And I just like completely bungled it. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I did so bad in that interview. Like, afterwards, I was like, damn. I was like, wow, like I'd be so surprised if they hired me. And they didn't. So I got really depressed again. And I think like as an artist, especially in an industry that's so tough and oftentimes wants to pit you against your friends, it's completely normal to feel this way all the time. Like to always feel doubt about yourself and about your skill as an artist. But the thing is like the thing is like I just felt like I could never stop drawing. For me, like it just wasn't an option because I love art so much. I think that's the only reason keeping me from quitting art was like how much I loved it, which I guess sounds like kind of a very logically straight answer, but I think it's important. That's like important part of my journey because there were times where I felt like I hated drawing so much because I felt like I was so bad at it. But I kind of have to realize like is being good at something isn't the point of doing it. And I think my love for art and creating is what kept me afloat. And also Stardew Valley. So when I finally like landed my first internship, I think for a second I thought like, oh, like now I can finally rest. And that's obviously not what happens. Like once you get your first opportunity, the workload just like keeps ramping up in some ways. I don't subscribe to that like hustle and grind culture. And like honestly, if you're at a studio that exploits you, you should do everything in your power to find different opportunities. But it's definitely not as simple as just like landing your first job and everything smooth sailing because there's a lot of upkeep that you have to do as well. And now as like a senior, my biggest struggle is no longer like self-confidence. It's honestly a lot more practical, which is the fact that I'm a senior, I'm working on my thesis, and if I don't finish my thesis, I'm not allowed to graduate. And I'm also working part-time at a studio. So some days I genuinely feel like I'm balding. But I think a lot of times as artists and just like as working people, especially in this economy, you do what you have to do. And learning how to deal with that is just a part of being a student. So I want to talk a little bit about my internship experience at DreamWorks. So last year in the spring, I finally made it into my first internship. I landed a VisDev internship at DreamWorks on Forgotten Island, which if you guys don't know, it's a Filipino mythology inspired. film that is like about friendship. And I'm not sure how much more I can say without breaking an NDA and getting blacklisted, but it comes out in 2026, so you guys all should watch it. It is wonderful. But for me, I kind of just cold applied. I knew one recruiter, but she was on maternity leave when I applied. So I genuinely just got really lucky. And something about internships that I actually have a lot of people asking me about is like, how do you know what to put in your portfolio to get the internship? And the honest answer is that it's completely different for every studio. At DreamWorks, you're working on the actual productions, and the internships are released on a basis of production need. So I was brought onto DreamWorks specifically for Forgotten Island because that team was looking for an intern. And I think I got lucky because my art style kind of matches the look of the production design pretty well. But if, say, like that year, a movie like The Wild Robot was hiring, I probably wouldn't have even made it past the door of like the recruiter's office because my art is like very high contrast and colorful and definitely not at all what like The Wild Robot is looking for. Um, so that's specifically at DreamWorks. But then there's other studios like Disney that I don't even know like what their whole deal is, but their internship is more like summer camp. You don't get to work on any of the productions, and they kind of just like it's pretty much just like a class for 10 weeks, and plus you get like industry connections. And so for a studio like Disney, I think it's much more about just like your art, like your basics, your fundamentals, like to put it bluntly, like how good you are. But at the end of the day, none of it's personal because every studio evaluates their internships completely differently. Someone who would be a perfect fit for like DreamWorks or Sony is probably not going to even make it past the door at Disney. And that's kind of the unfortunate reality of the industry sometimes. And sometimes you'll have like this feeling like, oh, I don't know what to do because like some studios are looking for something really specialized, but some people are looking for someone who's like an all-rounder. Um, at the end of the day, like I'll talk a little bit more about this and like how to actually really like jack up your portfolio and kind of cover all your grounds. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just luck. Everything that happens at a studio is based on project need. And sometimes there's going to be like three projects wanting you because you have the perfect art style for it. And sometimes like no projects are looking for your art style. And it's never personal. A lot of times really amazing artists get passed up and it's not because of how good their art is. So that's kind of a tangent I kind of went on. But for me, my first job, like actual studio job experience, was integral for me as a VisDev artist because up until you start your first job, you do so much work for your portfolio and it's all like conceptual. Like every project that you do, it's yours and it's yours alone. There's no IP, there's no legal issues. And then you go to a studio and then you realize like everything actually needs to work. So the way you approach this dev becomes a lot more tangible and it becomes a lot less like, oh, what is like the coolest looking thing? It's more like what's going to read the best? Does this have legal issues? Is this like something that even like fits in line with the character? Is this something that we can even achieve with the company's budget? There were so many times that I would pitch an idea that I thought was really cool, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, like that sounds amazing, but we just don't have the budget for it." And that would happen to a lot of artists. Sometimes things would get like entire sets would get nixed because there's not the budget for it. So that's just like one of the biggest differences about actually working at a studio, is that it's not like creating fun pieces for your portfolio. You, a lot of the times, especially after a project gets greenlit and there's no more like fun moment paintings to do anymore, it's a lot of grunt work. It's a lot of just like figuring out what this lamp looks like. What does this sidewalk look like? And honestly, I personally find that really beautiful. I find the granular stuff really beautiful because everything in a production matters. But it is something to keep in mind. And it's also something to keep in mind when you make your portfolio that you don't want to just do a bunch of really big illustrations. You want to make sure that people can see what you're thinking, how you operate as an artist, because that's how you fit best with a team. And then for DreamWorks, like I talked before about their structure as a internship, I was basically just like another VisDev artist on the team, except I was making minimum wage, which was a really fun experience. I'm not being sarcastic at all. Like it was actually really fun to be able to like LARP being a VisDev artist. And I think the good thing about that, besides not being paid properly, was that like it really prepared me for my current job, where now I kind of it's like pretty much the exact same situation. And I can just extrapolate what I learned at DreamWorks to Sony. And for anyone curious about like DreamWorks specifically, there was a really amazing work culture on this project. But something that you might hear now and again is like, oh, Sony has a really bad work culture, because like Spider-Verse and K-pop Demon Hunters, or like this studio has really good work culture, like they give everyone free food. It's That's true and not true at the same time, but work culture depends vastly from project to project, even within the same studio. So studios like Sony that are uh, you may or may not know are like known for having crazy work deadlines and stuff for projects like Spider-Verse that look amazing, but then all their artists get burnt out. Like that's a reality of things that happen, but it should not sway you from like having, I guess, an optimistic view on the industry because everything is completely project based. And at a studio that you may have heard bad things about, they'll probably have a bunch of projects that like have a really great and chill team. And let's see. So I kind of want to like after this now, I kind of want to talk a little bit about like my actual art journey as an artist and what I did throughout the years to kind of like pinpoint the mistakes in my art and what I did to improve and what I personally think kind of got me to a point where I was ready to enter the industry because um, I don't think my art was at a place to properly be like industry ready until probably sometime around like last year. And I don't think that's like a discouraging thing at all. The point of being a student is that you're here to learn, and there's a lot of things to learn. So I'm going to show you guys some shitty stuff that I made and then how I corrected it and improved. So this is starting in I think when I was like in sophomore year, so like 2 years ago. I'm not gonna show you guys anything from like before this because it was like truly bad. Like it was like truly awful. If you scroll down far enough on my Instagram, you'll find it. But anyways, we're not gonna talk about that. Anyways, I think like uh I did a lot of these like character designs and like character lineups and pages, like these splash pages when I was like when I think I was like kind of going for like a character kick. I think like what I would do differently if I could go back is like I wouldn't just do these like flashy lineups. Like I'd actually do like call out pages for all these characters, and like expression sheets and and even like turnarounds. Especially if you're thinking of becoming a character designer, like you need to know how to do turnarounds without like any flaw, like with like a 0% margin of error, because that's like one of the most important things like character designer. But yeah, I think, and then the painting is from this club at my school that we do like a mini film production every year. And what was like interesting about this piece is like it was done so long ago and I kind of forgot to take it off my portfolio, but I'm still like really proud of it. And it ended up like it ended up actually catching my production designer's eye like here at Sony, which I was very confused about. I was like, girl, like, that was like 2 years ago. But that's another thing. Never label the art on your website with years because you don't want to date yourself. Like you don't want someone to think like that was super long ago and you can't replicate it. Like recruiters don't all or like PDs, recruiters, like the people who are looking at your art, like don't need to know exactly when it was made. They just need to know if it's good. And sometimes if they see that it's like made too long ago, it might dissuade them from thinking that that's something you can replicate. Anyways, that's just like a small tip. Some light is blinding me. Um, so yeah, and sophomore year too, I was working on my sophomore thesis film. I'm sure you guys know already, like at schools like Cal to do a film basically every year. That's not an option for a school like USC where you have a bunch of GEs and like external academic classes that you do. So we only get like 2 films. But I think this is the first time I ever did like a proper color script. There's a lot of things I would change about this, but given the scope of the project that it was all production within like 1 semester, I would say it's like pretty good, but there's a lot of granular issues with this color script that definitely I think wouldn't be like I would definitely need to fix if I wanted it to be like industry ready. But also another thing like within the industry, like at something on something like a large scale, like a feature movie, it's very rare for artists to even be given tasks like these tiny color scripts. A lot of time you're going to be doing keys, which is like full-size paintings. But I think like it was kind of important for me to show some of this stuff to show that I can play around with color and light, albeit this is like a much more stylized way. And then I started something I think that really improved my portfolio once I was kind of like getting to the place where I was ready to do an internship at an actual studio was doing things like technical things like call outs. So Like this right here, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but on the right side of my screen, the doll girl, this is like a project I did for a class, and it was like a production design class, and it was basically just like you're making a story, and like it's basically just like your normal project deck. And so I'm not sure if any of you guys are familiar with the concept of packaging, but that's like 90% of VisDev when you're in industry, and that's like okay what I mean by like grunt work. Like it's not the big fancy paintings that you see in the art of books, but it's super important. And it's basically calling out textures and things within character paintings or like prop designs. And what that's important for is for surfacing. So as a VisDev artist, you design the prop or the character or whatever, and then it goes down the line, it gets modeled, and then it gets surfaced. And the surfacing artist is the person who applies all the painterly effects to the model, and they need to know what that looks like. And so, as your job as a VisDev artist is to know how to packet it properly. So, what I would say is something that would set you apart from a bunch of people when applying to internships and applying to jobs is knowing how to do granular things like packeting. And I have a whole slide later down the line about like some portfolio tips. I'll talk a bit more about like secret hidden things that like people don't tell you you should probably include on a biz dev portfolio. So it can seem a little boring at times, but I would definitely recommend figuring out or teaching yourself how to pack it properly. And then also, I personally think it's best to do like these cohesive project decks. This is just like a moment painting I did. This is kind of like outside of my wheelhouse. Like I'm kind of someone who really loves like that Tekkonkinkreet style, like super line work, heavy anime influence stuff. But I felt like personally, like if I wanted to get a job in the Western animation industry, I was gonna have to learn how to cater to them a little bit more. So for me, this project, I really wanted to make sure that I demonstrated that I could paint in 3D, because even though it's not what I love the most, I can do it and I can do it well enough to be on like an actual studio production. So that was the main goal with me for this project. And that is something I think I recommend a lot of like VisDev artists starting out to do, is to kind of show that you can do a wide range of things. I also, this is like more self-indulgent. Like at the time that I got my internship, I kind of was like, okay, like no more portfolio grind, like I'm done. So I started doing like really self-indulgent stuff. So like even though like, like I said, like that 2D line art stuff isn't like the most appealing to a lot of Western studios, I really enjoyed it. So I did a lot of stuff for like my OCs. I really love this painting. And like, you know, I don't know. I thought it looked pretty good. I think this is around the time that I really like was able to take a look back at my art and be like, you know what? Like, I don't hate it. No more 12-hour Stardew Valley grind. Uh, but yeah, like a lot of just like I think part of it too is like making sure to not burn yourself out. Um, it's fun to do a lot of portfolio grind, but also remember to like draw for yourself and draw for your own heart, because you don't want to end up in a place where you're really successful and then all of a sudden you realize like, oh, I like hate what I'm doing. So something for me is like I always make sure that I'm like making personal work, not because I feel like I have to, but because it brings me joy. Right now, currently, I literally do not have time to do anything other than work. But there will be copious amounts of personal work being drawn the moment I graduate. And yeah, so I think like you can kind of tell like I stopped doing like biz dev pieces and started doing more just like personal self-indulgent illustration once I got a job. Because I was like, oh, no more need for portfolio grind. Like now, like I can just get stuff on connections. I don't know if that's like the best route to take. I think I'm kind of like a lazy chud, but I but I do love like this is what I mean. Like I love these like character-based illustrations with this more like kind of graphic like illustrative style, and that's what I do for myself, to keep myself loving art. And I think that kind of mental upkeep is also really important, especially when you're a working artist. Okay, so I want to share a little bit about my thesis film because I'm not allowed to show you anything from the studios I'm working at because I have signed contracts, but I can show you stuff that is owned by me. So I'm not sure if you guys are like majority of like art majors and you guys have your own thesis projects, or if you guys are just interested and you don't have to do this bullshit. But I'm gonna give you some tips on how I manage my time and whatnot. So preparing for my thesis film, I'm gonna show you some pre-production that I did. This is another color script that I did. I think you guys can kind of see like how I improved my color sensibilities throughout I think there's like a 2-year difference between this one and the last one. I kind of learned a lot more about even like why you need a color script, you want to make sure your colors are clear because you kind of want to represent like what the film is going to look like as a whole. And for me, I'm an artist who uses color very emotively. I think that in every piece, color is symbolic. Um, like I'm the kid who overanalyzes, the the high school books or whatever. So for me, it's like very important that the colors all make sense. That's why I felt the need to do like a super detailed color script. But of course, if you're working on a project where it's like you're focusing on other aspects of the art, maybe like it's super line work heavy, you're just doing it in black and white. Like obviously something like this is not necessary at all. So it comes from knowing yourself, knowing your project and whatnot. Again, like since I'm animating, like I had to do character turnarounds, which are super fun, but they're super helpful. And then also for like I have it features there's like a nuclear power plant as like a central object in my film. So this is another thing that I definitely recommend when you're putting together your VisDev sheets is including your references. This is something that people do in like within like actual VisDev studios. You can't get away with not showing your references. You have to show your references every single time because obviously the people like your bosses, your PD, your production designer, and your art director want to know where you're getting your ideas from. They want to know what your research and your process is. Having your references is part of that process. And I feel like that's something that no one really told me about until I like started working at DreamWorks and I realized that everyone was showing like pages and pages of reference. And I like kind of just did it because everyone else was doing it. But now that I'm there, like now that I'm like working, I'm like, how did no one tell me this? Like this is so important. Put your references in your portfolio. It only shows recruiters and PDs that you're someone who is like thinking through their process, you know? So this is like how I put it together. Like I think this is satisfactory to show what my references are. And another thing, legal issues. Um, I became very good at skirting the legal department when I was working at DreamWorks. Uh, but like again, like you have to include a bunch of references because there's legal logistics to designing things. And if they look at your references and they're like, oh, that like looks way too much like the blah 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 reference, like they're gonna flag it and you have to redesign it. So you don't want your movie to get sued. You don't want your production to get sued because of you, because that is the fastest way to get blacklisted. Okay, so this might look a picture. Basically just like a painting I did to show myself and my like faculty what my film should potentially look like once it's like animated and composited and everything. And then these are some backgrounds that I'm working on. So there's no like lighting or compositing attached to them yet. So they look a little bit dull, but like this is kind of like my process for like painting backgrounds. I don't know if it's super professional, but I don't know. It's like a student film. Uh, but yeah, my film is like shot in like Univisium, which is 2:1 aspect ratio. So I don't really know what I'm saying. No one else has seen this because I gatekeep everything for my classmates. So you guys are the first to see this. Okay. I also have a proof of concept that I can show you guys. So this is just basically like a couple of test shots I did just to show people that I am capable of making this film. Um, One second. I'm gonna make sure the quality is good. Okay, yeah, anyways. Like if you're doing a thesis, it's always important to show people that you can actually create what you're telling them you can create. Okay, cool. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about my current job. So, and how I got it. So during my fall semester, which was last semester for me at USC, I was reached out to by Sony to do VisDev for an unannounced project. And it was actually an art director who worked on the sinking boat known as Shrek 5 at DreamWorks, and Sony snatched her up. And we never talked ever. Like we never even formally knew each other, but I guess she liked my art, so she asked me if I'd be willing come onto this project. She thought I graduated already. So she came up to my booth at Lightbox and she was like, hey, like, did you get my email? And I was like, oh my gosh, yes, girl, like, I'm so excited. She was like asking me what I was doing. And I was like, oh, I'm still in school. And then her eyes went like blank and she was like, it just slowly backed away from my booth. And she's like, oh, we were looking for a full-time artist. And I was like, okay, no worries. But then I guess they like made it work for me anyways, which I'm super glad for. Like I was able to negotiate to be part-time, so my Asian mom does not get mad at me. Um, that degree is important, guys. And so I'm working 20 hours a week at Sony, and then the rest. I don't know, like 40 hours a week of my life is on my thesis, which kind of sucks. And I'm going to be like spiritually and physically bald in the next 3 months. But like wigs exist, so it's fine. But I think this is just something that I have to do. It's like, I don't know, it's character development. Uh, okay. Portfolio tips. I These are just like the main ones that I kind of compiled that I think recruiters don't really tell people about. One, make sure I think like the one thing that seems so logical, but people don't really talk about it is like make sure your website is formatted as clearly as possible because recruiters, like I've seen them do it. They spend 5 seconds on someone's website before passing up, and like PDs and ADs do like too. Make sure you're presenting your art as quickly and as clearly as possible. And this doesn't always just mean like, oh, your UI is fast or like the buttons are big enough. Like for me, before like I kind of revamped my website last year, but before I had it separated into two sections on like my landing page, character design and VisDev, but I had like a bunch of cohesive projects I ended up having to break up because I had to break up in the character design and the VisDev. And I had recruiters being like, "Oh, your work is like really good, but I want to see a cohesive story." And I'm like, "No, there is a cohesive story." So I talked to one of my like faculty people and she was like, yeah, like your website sucks. You should have project decks because you're an artist who works in projects, so showcase your work in projects so like recruiters could see like everything, and that's like a much clearer way for me. And I think that's not like the end all be all for everyone. I think that's what works for me as someone who doesn't really like to work in individual pieces. Like I like to make a story and hyperfixate on it and whatnot. So having like a bunch of different decks on my landing page is really helpful for me. But if you're like an illustrator, you don't need to do that. Just have like a gallery, and that's like the best way for people to see it. So it's different. It differs from person to person and artist to artist. And honestly, what I would like recommend the most is just like getting portfolio advice from people who are working in the industry because like I said before, people who have retired out of the industry because of the nature of how this industry works and how it changes so fast, very quickly information gets cycled out. So you want to talk to someone who's like actively working because they know the best. And so this kind of leads to my next point. Like, especially for VisDev, a lot of people want to see projects that showcase your ability to do narrative storytelling. So if you're designing a character lineup, don't just stop there. Like, do expressions, like figure out who these characters are, do call out sheets for the characters, do character paintings, and then do like environment pieces for the world that that character exists in, and then put your character into those environment pieces, and then make it a moment painting, like a splash painting, and then design props for your character. Like I don't know, design their room or design whatever space that they're in, and then call out those props and do paintings for those props. Like it could go on and on. You can infinitely expand on one idea, and I would personally say like find out what you love and draw what you love because people can tell when you're not being true of heart. Uh, or pure of heart, like the unicorn from Gravity Falls or whatever. Like make sure that you're drawing what you love because that love will definitely come through. So that's what I recommend is finding something that really resonates with you and just expanding and expanding on it so that people can see that you're capable of that because that's what working on a project is. You're not going to be like, chances are you're not going to be like Shi and Kim jumping from studio to studio every 3 months, just like doing freelance character design work. A lot of times you're going to be stationed on one project for like years at a time, and they want to show that you can have that consistency. Um, and another thing is like it's really tempting as a biz dev artist to do like big fun paintings and fun lineups and like flashy art. And that's important too. Obviously, like you want to show people you're good, but like I was saying before, you gotta do the grunt work too. You gotta show that you can do the grunt work. So show iterations. Like if you're gonna design a character, don't just paint the character and throw them in your portfolio. Like uh do a bunch of iterations, like label them like A, B, C, D. Like how did you get to like the final character design? Why did this work for you? Why did this particular thing work for you? Do breakdowns, show your process, and then like I said before, packaging. Like learn how to pack it and do it properly, and people will honestly be like really impressed that you even know what that is. Because all of that stuff, like the grunt work stuff, that's the majority of what you're going to be doing as a biz dev artist. So if you show that in your portfolio, you're like already like 90% better than a lot of the people that you're competing with to get a job who are only showing their like cool, fun plein airs. And then I would honestly say like I think you should experiment with different styles as like a VisDev artist. Like go outside your comfort zone. If you're someone like me who really likes line work and is really comfortable with like line work style paintings, try doing like photo studies with like painting, and like limiting yourself with like just like funky abstract brushes and experiment and try and like train yourself to be able to do different styles because chances are you're not gonna be on a show that fits your personal sensibilities 100% perfectly. You're always gonna have to adapt some way or another. So the best thing you could do is show people that you can absolutely adapt. And then one last thing is, like I said before, try to get some like professional eyes on your work. Recruiters are great for getting your work through the door for internships, but like they're kind of useless if you're trying to get like an actual job. I wouldn't say useless, but I think they're much more useful for an internship role because they're the gatekeepers between you and the hiring manager. But for like an actual VisDev role, what I see more often is like a production designer is like, oh, we need another VisDev artist on the team. I already know three people off the top of my head who I want. And that's for the most part how people got hired. I mean, like that's how I was able to get my last job. The LinkedIn postings you see for like VisDev artists and stuff are kind of fake. They go up when someone gets hired because the company legally has to. So the best thing you can do for yourself to put yourself in an opportunity where you can get hired is know people. And it sounds really, really inaccessible, but there are ways that you can make it more accessible for yourself. So I'm sure people have given you this advice already since you're in college. I was like, oh, cool, email people. But like genuinely, it really does work. Like I had a friend who was like watch this panel and there was like an art director from Netflix there and he was like, oh, I think that guy's cool. So he went and DM'd him, or no, he like DM'd him on LinkedIn. It was like, hey, I went to your panel, loved it. Would you want to get coffee sometime? Like he offered to buy him coffee and they did. They had a chat and it was awesome. Go to events if you can. I know a lot of them are based in California, but if you can go to like any virtual events or if you have the resources to fly to like an event like Lightbox, networking horizontally or making friends is like one of the most important things you can do. Um, Getting people to be able to see your work and also just become friends with you because talent can only take you so far. Like no one wants to work with people would rather work with someone who's, I don't know, maybe just more like solid, doesn't have like is like not like the most is not like the Shohei Ohtani of art or whatever, but they're like a really fun person rather than someone who's like amazing, but they're a total diva. Like I've seen it happen before. Uh, and so as long as you're like a really chill person to work with, once your talent and your hard work gets you into the door, that's what people are going to be focusing on. So I think like the best thing you can do, honestly, even is like if you go on Instagram and you just DM like an artist you really like, just be like, hey, like I've loved your art for a long time. And just like be genuine with it, you know? Like don't do this to someone that you're not following. Like make sure that like you're actually being responsive to like taking up people's time, but be like, I really like your art. I've been following your art for a really long time. Would you like I hope I'm not bothering you, but I would really love to hear some of your thoughts on blah blah blah. And building relationships with people. It's not as inaccessible as you think, but it does come at the price of your social anxiety. Uh, but yeah, I also have some tips for that. As someone with a lot of social anxiety in this industry as well, that I can talk a little bit more about if anyone has specific questions. But for now, I think I've yapped enough, and that's it. I have my Instagram and my website and my email. If you guys have any other questions, you are so free to talk to me, and I will try to respond in 5 to 7 business days. Thanks, guys. I feel like I like yap for so long. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for speaking for us. Do we have any questions?
Hi, thank you so much for like presenting. I think your art is so cool. I was
For
wondering,
you.
one of the things that you like, I think briefly mentioned was that you had like pitched things in the industry before. I'm not exactly like sure what specifically, but I was kind of wondering like what that experience was like because I'm not sure like how realistic it is to like aspire to like pitch a project or something, but that is something that I would like love to do probably
hmm
far in the future. So I was just like, so I guess just like what was that experience like and is it realistic?
hmm Yeah, so I think I might have misled you guys a little bit. Pitching is kind of the process in the industry. Like when it comes to pitching for VisDev, it just means like pitching your work. So when you're working on a VisDev team, especially at larger studios, they have these things called rounds, which is basically your production designer and your art director reviewing your work before dailies or director art review, and you have to pitch your work. So sometimes like they'll give me an assignment, and while I'm working on it, I'm like, oh, I have an idea that could expand on this assignment, but it wasn't included in my original launch. So I'll pitch an idea to my production designer, or like I'll pitch an idea to the directors, but I'm never pitching like an original IP or like a personal project. Um, I think that's something I'm not super qualified to answer, but I will say that's not entirely impossible because I know that I don't know if DreamWorks is still doing this right now, but at Disney, and I think a lot of other studios kind of have adopted this thing. They have this thing called short circuit, and anyone from the studio can pitch an idea, and it's kind of like a competition, and then they decide on an idea, and they kind of help you assemble a team and kind of guide you through on how to like on creating a short film. So if you guys have Disney Plus, you can go to Disney Plus and search up Disney Short Circuit, and you can watch a bunch of films that were directed and created by people who are not directors themselves. Like they're either just like storyboard artists or like VisDev artists, or like they don't even have to be artists working in the studio. They could be like a secretary or like a janitor. Like literally anyone in the studio can pitch. Um, and the studio provides you with the resources. So that's something that a lot of larger studios have that you might be interested in. Um, but I think there's also, I'm not completely qualified to answer on this, but I think there's also a lot you can do within like indie studios as well. I don't have a lot of experience working with indie studios, but I think like there's definitely ways to get your work pitched. Um, and it can be somewhat bureaucratic if you want to do it at a larger studio, but I've had the experience that directors and like indie studios are much more receptive to hearing people's ideas.
Yeah, that was really helpful. Thank you.
I am just such a huge fan of your work. I was looking at uh I'm currently doing software studio, and a lot of your pieces have been like a huge inspiration, particularly that magical girl character sheet. That's actually on my mood board. I'm not even gonna lie to you. So I
Thank you.
really
That's so sweet.
this is just I'm so yeah, I'm geeking out. So
Thank
yeah.
you. That means so much to me. Thank you guys so much.
Hi, you talked about how important references are, and I was wondering if you had like a specific process for finding references, and like is it like when you're kind of done finding them, or is it like you're constantly looking for references?
That's a really good question. So, almost every working artist I know has like a very expansive Pinterest. It's very rare for me to like not be using Pinterest on any given day. That is like where I find a ton of my references because this Pinterest like picture search engine is just so crazy. I've like found my own art on Pinterest before. Like it's like everything is like always connected. So I definitely recommend Pinterest. I'm sure everyone here uses Pinterest already, but it is a completely valid way of finding references. You just gotta be diligent in making sure that like it's credible, or that it's like not AI, right? But a lot of times I kind of just search stuff up on Google too, and I think you bring up a really interesting point about when do you know you're done with finding references. I think I always make like a PRF board, especially when I'm working on my personal projects. If I'm doing something that's like a small assignment, like a prop or something, I'll just paste it directly onto Photoshop. But if I'm doing like a larger moment painting, I'll make like a PRF board, and I'll like paste a bunch of paintings that inspire me, usually a mix of like other people's work that inspires me specifically for that piece. And then I put in a lot of like film photography or just like photography in general. But you're completely right in that it's kind of a like infinite process in a sense. I usually have like multiple passes, but I'm not doing it like intentionally. Like I usually have like a first pass of references when I'm starting and working and stuff. And sometimes I'll be like working and I hit a plateau and I'm like, oh, like I feel like I don't know where to take this piece. So I go back on Pinterest and I doom scroll for like 30 minutes. So there are times when I'm like constantly adding preferences or references, and sometimes I kind of just have a clear enough vision that a couple of references are enough for me, and I don't find myself needing to go back and look for more. I think that's something that is like always that can be like pretty personable. Like you can kind of like there's no like hard and fast rule for it. I would say if it's professional work, I usually try to include like 5 references at the least. If it's for something that's like super conceptual, so if it's for like an everyday prop object, like 5 references is like totally fine. If you're designing like a set or like an environment or like a character that's pulling from a bunch of different like fantasy environments and things that are like totally unreal, it would definitely serve you to have, a much larger mood board. So the answer honestly is like it really depends on the scope of the project, what your goal with the project is, like who the project is for. Uh, but I think it's something that I kind of just like test out as I go. If I feel like I'm at a plateau and I don't know where to take something, I always just try to look for more references, but sometimes it's just not always possible. I don't think it's something that you need to like, I think it's something that you can do pretty intuitively.
Yeah, on the topic of like inspirations, have you ever used like 3D models for reference or and also have you found like what have you found a lot of inspiration from your like general class, like academic classes, and like what is like your favorite kind of subject to investigate?
Mhm. Yeah, so wait, sorry, your first question, sorry, could you repeat the first part of your question again?
Yeah, it was I was just wondering if you've ever used like 3D like
Yeah.
models.
Yes. Okay. So I suck at 3D and I hate Maya, but 3D using 3D models to map out and like I don't know, be like a basis or what's the word? Like foundation for your art is so valid. And I know so many professional artists are doing this, especially if you're painting something stupid with like a bunch of perspective lines, like a city. I'm like you should be using 3D models if you can. I kind of don't because I'm lazy, but like I should, and like I probably will force myself to learn Blender eventually. Using 3D models it's not cheating. The same way that using references is not cheating. Use all the tools that you have at your advantage. And honestly, I'd make the case that in some cases, like even like tracing is not cheating as long as you're not using it to like replicate someone else's worth for like your or work for your own gain. Um, I think like there's a lot of like, uppity feelings people have about, art and digital art, especially. But no, using tools is never cheating. Uh, and 3D, I use 3D all the time, or not all the time. I'm kind of exaggerating my own skill level here, but like for my thesis film, I had a shot where I had to animate a 3D object that was like kind of complicated, and it was like kind of moving across different planes. So I literally just like downloaded a model from TurboSquid and I put it into Maya and I animated in Maya and then I imported it into my animation software and then traced over it. And IDGAF, like if you think that like if someone wants to call me out on it, like IDGAF. But it saved me a lot of trouble. And then um sorry, I'm so stupid. The second part of your question, well, oh, inspiration from other classes. Yeah. So like I guess it's a little generic to say like inspirations sparks from like anything, but I will say that it's like a lot of times when I'm learning things about like something that has nothing to do with art, it kind of inspires like my world building specifically. So like for one of my projects, it's like about these characters who live in like this fishing ocean slum town. And I've kind of been like developing these characters since I was in high school because it was like deeply inspired by my AP Euro class when I was learning about the Gilded Age in America. So like I think for me, like I think like some like historical things are always fascinating me. Obviously like art imitates life, right? So like sometimes like things that have actually happened stand for like a really good basis for things that you're trying to create. And a lot of times too, like I don't know, especially if you're like world building for something that's like can be complicated, like a magic system or something, like actually researching like scientific things or historical things can be pretty useful. But I think like it is really useful to take whatever academic knowledge you have and apply it to yourself, because that level of authenticity is like so purely earned. Um, but a lot of times too, like I'm trying to think, like academic classes and inspiration, like I also, yeah, I get a lot of inspiration from like other forms of media too. For a lot of times, like I try not to limit myself to just being someone who's knowledgeable in animation. Like for me, I take so much color inspiration from film photography and like live action films. So I love looking at like I wouldn't say like color script, but it's like you can there's like websites where you can look at like the whole color like frame by frame of like any movie, like live action movies and stuff. Like I love the look of like film lighting, so that's something I'm always taking inspiration from. I think it's just like there's so many things in your life that will undoubtedly inspire you, and like I think it's just kind of like what I would say is like try to save everything that you can. Like write down things when you think of them. Take pictures of things, just like random things. I have so many pictures of like random shit in my like camera roll that like 2 years down the line I'll be like, oh right, like I took a picture of that storm drain. Like I will use that now.
I also have a question. I was wondering like what type of like software or like drawing app do you use to like do your art? And like is there any like tools or techniques that is really useful or like people should know about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Photoshop is the industry standard. You will not be able to get away with not being able to use Photoshop if you intend to work for a larger studio like Netflix, Sony, DreamWorks, Disney. It's kind of like a requirement. Honestly, like just like yeah, like Adobe and whatnot. But I will say like that's not necessarily true anymore because the animation or for like other parts of the animation, like more indie parts of the animation. Like I have a friend who's a very successful indie animator who only uses Clip Studio Paint. So I think it really depends on what you're trying to go for. I would say like if your main goal is to work for a like one of those like large like top five animation studios, learning Photoshop is basically a requirement. Um, I so that's what I mainly use, but I think I started properly learning how to use Photoshop as a painting program sometime when I was around like freshman year, like midway through freshman year. And it was honestly really annoying because learning a new program is always annoying, but once you learn one, you can kind of extrapolate again and again. I like Procreate for drafting, but as a painter, I don't love it because the brush engine is kind of weird. But that being said, like Procreate is a really incredibly accessible tool because Photoshop has this like horrible subscription program. So I would honestly try to use whatever student discount you can for any program out there. Other drawing programs that I would definitely recommend, yeah, like Clip Studio Paint for illustration. And then I think it's also pretty good to familiarize yourself with other kinds of art programs. Like I was kind of forced to learn After Effects, but I found it pretty useful in my experience to like, especially doing like it's kind of basically necessary to do any kind of like animation or compositing. Premiere Pro, and that's more for like the actual animation, like film side of things. I would say that Blender is outside of Photoshop, that's like the second best tool you could equip yourself as an for like as an artist. And I have no idea how to use Blender, so I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot. But I would that's like that's a program that I would definitely recommend. And then a lot of people might tell you that you should familiarize yourself with Maya. I think Maya is like I think Maya is like a needlessly, stupidly complicated and expensive version of Blender. So unless you're intending to be a 3D animator, you don't really need to know Maya. But yeah, I would say number one program that you should learn is Photoshop.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
Sorry, I may have one more question, but I was wondering, like, first of all, I did really appreciate the part of when you were talking about how like a public university versus like a private dedicated art college, because that's like a decision that I also struggled with like a lot and I still kind of question to this day. So that was definitely like very helpful to hear about. And I was wondering if you feel like a university being, even though it was larger, like being in like California or somewhere like that, if since like California is so tight with the animation industry, if that maybe also played a role in it, or if you think that somewhere like Michigan could still very easily get in contact with the animation industry.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I'm not gonna lie, it is extremely advantageous to breaking in the animation industry to like actually living here. So like for example, it allowed me to apply for internship cycles in the fall and the spring and be able to go to school and then go to internships that essentially require you to be in person and I could still go to school and then complete the internships. That's something that you can't do unless you live in California. Um, so that's an example of how geography can sometimes like, be a detriment for us. Um, but I will say, like, I don't think it's impossible to get into like break into the industry just because you live somewhere that's geographically further. Like one of my closest friends who interned with me at DreamWorks goes to school in Florida. And like she goes to a pretty like well-known art school in Florida, but like for the animation industry, like I said before, like it's pretty much like Cal Arts and Art Center. And again, like she like me, like we both ended up just like cold applying and sometimes somehow we're able to like I don't know, like squeeze our way in. So I would say like I've definitely seen success stories of people who are able to break into the industry from like far away. And obviously the caveat of that is that you have to either stop your schooling or you have to wait till after you graduate or you have to I don't know, like, or you have to like be remote and you don't get to like form those in-person connections as much. But a lot of the time too, like improving your art to the point that it's industry ready isn't dependent on where you live. It's dependent on the people and the support that you have. So something I low-key forgot to mention too much in my presentation is how many resources there are, like online resources there are for students. And I'm not just talking about like pay to win art packages and stuff. Like there are classes, obviously those they still have to pay for, but like have you guys heard of like warrior painters and stuff? They have classes with like industry professionals that will actually teach you stuff that like they've learned in the industry, like art and painting skills that they have. And obviously like, that's still like a class, but that's not a class that's like landlocked in California. Like another thing too that I mentioned is like having connections with industry people. It helps to be in California, but again, like making those connections online, being brave enough to like comment on your favorite artist's Instagram post and like asking them for just like a little bit of their time. Um, I think you'll have more success than you think you will. Um, like some people may never see your message and they're not responding out of malice. Uh, but sometimes people will see your message. You never know who's able to see it and who's able to like help you and build that connection with you. Um, and there's also like VisDev mentorships that are also, I think, completely virtual. One of my friends did a VisDev mentorship with Albert Lim, who's a VisDev artist at Sony, and I think they're open right now. His mentorship is open, and he ended up like, yeah, after that mentorship, he like literally locked in like VisDev internship at DreamWorks. And a lot of these mentorships with like VisDev artists working in the industry aren't super advertised the way they are like on LinkedIn with internships and whatnot because they're like just everyday people who want to offer their knowledge to others. So these are things that you low-key have to like hunt for yourself. But that's something that you'd have to search for on your own, whether you live in California or Michigan. So I think just having the knowledge that things like that exist is really good too. And that's also something that can really help build your industry connections.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll be honest, I'm not interested in to the animation industry. But I have a friend who does. And he lives in California currently right now. Do you think he should make both of his connections right now? His school shutting down. Do you think both of his connections right now? Or do you think or do you like because he's gonna move from California to Michigan? Do you think he should make like most of his connections right now as a freshman?
Oh, okay. So he's a freshman going to school in California and he's going to stay there for the next 4 years, right?
No, because the school
Oh,
shut
okay.
down.
Oh, does he go to CCA?
Yeah.
Oh, that's unprecedented. Okay, let me think about this.
Okay. I'm like low key here for him, so.
Okay. So yeah, I think my personal thing is he should try to make as many friends, not just connections, like make as many friends with people who are going to stay in California and the industry as possible. Like yeah, and obviously like coffee chat as many people as he can so that he can stay, updated on the needs and the info in the industry. Because if he intends to someday move back to California, I think it's good to always have someone who is there for you, who can like help support you. I think so, because there's a time limit on it, I would say like there is probably a driving force that he should probably consider and start making sure that he like has people that he can talk to. But I don't want to assume like your friend's situation, but like I don't know, try to go back to California when you can.
I'll ask another.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, it's me again. I was wondering if like what your workflow is like and also like how you get out of art block, especially since like the art industry is so rigorous.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I have art block maybe like I don't know. I probably like every month, honestly. Art block is so real. I don't know a single artist who doesn't get art block. I had an insane art block this past summer. Like I was just like I would like try to like illustrate something and then like 30 minutes in, I'd be like I give up. I'm gonna go watch Demon Slayer. And my best advice for getting out of art blocks, like I've been in the trenches. I get it. Honestly, it's like it sounds counterintuitive, but like don't try to make art for a little bit. Like, I don't know, go outside, touch grass, watch movies, watch shows, hang out with your friends, because I kind of found that the best way to defeat art block, unless there's like a ticking time bomb where you have to defeat art block to, I don't know, do something for a portfolio or whatever. Like I would say that the best way for me that I found to defeat art block is honestly just to like one, leave my room. Two, like engage with other people's art because art in itself, like regardless of whether you made it or not, is like so can be really inspiring. And you honestly like never know what is going to help you the most. Like for me, the last thing that got me out of art block, honestly, was like watching 5 seasons of Demon Slayer. And then I started drawing, like I started making like Demon Slayer fan art at work and then drawing all my coworkers as like in the Demon Slayer art style. And for some reason, like that helped me stop like that helped me a lot when I was like finally went back to my Wacom and like started like drawing for real again. And this may sound counter to what I just said, but another method that I sometimes do is just like force myself to draw something, knowing that it's not going to be good, knowing that it's not going to be up to my standards. I force myself to just complete a piece and just be done with it because sometimes like that process of like forcing yourself to do something like that can, I don't know, like um it can kind of force you to like restart the art part of your brain. And I think my way of tackling art block is usually doing both of these things at different times. So like going outside, hanging out with my friends, taking the pressure off of myself, and then when I'm finally ready, go back to art with no expectations of it looking good, doing it just for myself. And like honestly, it's kind of I kind of think of it like your car dies and you have to like jumpstart it. Um, was there another part of your question?
Oh no, that was it actually.
Okay, yeah, but anyways, art block is so crazy. I hate it so much. But I usually just try to engage with other art until something like appeals to the hamster part of my brain, and I'm like, I'm gonna try, I'm gonna try anime.
Very true. Thank you.
I also have another question in relation to internships.
Mhm.
So you mentioned like in your presentation like how like all these different like studios are looking for like different things. And I was wondering like what are some things that they like have in common, like are trying to like look for specifically? And
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So let me think. Obviously, every studio that's looking for an art intern is going to want to see that you have your basics and your fundamentals down. Um, And something that I've kind of noticed as a through line and what really works for the like portfolios that I've seen get accepted into a bunch of different studios is people that have narrative-based projects because the animation industry is so focused on narrative storytelling. So I think I went over a little bit of this earlier, but like having projects that encompass more than just like a couple images of like one part of a story. Like make sure you're really expanding on things, showing that you can tell a story with your art and have clear readability with your art. I think some of the things that every studio is looking for, regardless of whatever project they're on, is how readable and clean your work is. Because a lot of times in the industry, a flashy, cool looking design will get passed up because it's not reading. You want things like things are not going to be on screen. Like it's you're not looking at a TikTok slideshow when you open it, like you like watch a Netflix show, right? Like it's a moving image. It needs to be able to read clearly. So having designs that the moment you see it, you know exactly what you're looking at. And something I think that can help a lot is silhouette value. So sometimes you'll see like a lot of game artists do this where they like draw a character, like they draw a prop or something, and then they black it out completely. And that helps you look at the silhouette value and the readability of whatever you're designing. Um, so especially with characters, that can be a really useful tool. So that's like I think one of the number one things I've seen, other than just like properly good narrative storytelling, is having designs that are extremely readable. Um, let me think, is there anything else I would say like big studios looking for? Um, Yeah, another thing I think that I've seen that is like really successful in portfolios is iterations, making sure that you can design multiple of one thing. So, like if you're designing like, I don't know, like a vehicle for a project, don't just show like one vehicle. You're like, this is my final design. Like show all of your iterations and how you got there, how you experimented with things. I think that's a valuable skill that you're showing because obviously there are times when like someone's style and artistic sensibilities just fit a show better than yours and it's nothing personal. But the way that you can mitigate that like factor of luck is by showing them all of your like putting all of your design capabilities on stage. So yeah, I think those are like the necessary things that a proper VisDev portfolio should have.
Okay, thank you.
I have two final questions if nobody else has any. So, you talked a lot about your love for Stardew Valley, and I was wondering what your favorite character is in that game.
Oh my God. Okay. Definitely Krobus. That's like not even a competition. I love Krobus. Like my favorite marriage route is asking Krobus to be your roommate and then just like dating everyone in the game. Like really slutting yourself up. I think it's so funny. Uh, but if I had to pick like a human character, oh, this is so difficult. Oh my God. I think I would have to say, oh my God. Okay. Either Sebastian. Sorry, this is like a really important question to me. I'm so sorry that I'm answering this with like more sincerity than any other question, but it's so important to me.
No,
Um,
totally.
yeah, I like Sebastian like I get it so much. Like me too. Like he's just a fucking chud. Um, and um this is gonna be maybe an unpopular opinion. I've just always loved Emily so much. Like I've had blue hair before, so maybe that's why I resonate with her. I just like no one gets her like I do, you know? They don't get you, Emily.
Yeah. And then more broadly, is there any like media that you're really interested in these days?
Mm-hmm. Yes, okay. That is such a good question. One of my favorite movies that I reference for so much of my art, and if you haven't seen this movie before, once you like watch it or just look up pictures of it and then look back at my art, you'll see that I'm basically like a giant ripoff at points. But I love this film. It's called Tekkonkinkreet. Uh, Tekkonkinkreet, Tekkon Kincrete. Anyways, it's just like the most incredible industrial backgrounds ever. And I love that like super intricate background and then like simple, flat, cel-shaded character. Like that's where I get a lot of my inspiration for my personal style from. And in terms of like media and movies, what's my letterbox top for right now? Um, I think Look Back is on there for sure. I love Look Back. Look Back is one of my favorite movies. Uh, like yeah, there is a suspiciously shaped look back lump in my stomach. And I referenced it so much for my thesis film. Like I just love Fujimoto's work so much. Like I have this whole like rant, I don't know if that's the right word, about how I think like I love that he like the way he draws women, like he's not afraid to make them look ugly per se. Whereas I think a lot of other artists, but like when they're drawing female characters and they want them to be strong, they think they have to be like beautiful and perfect all the time. Like I just love that when he draws ugly expressions and it's not played for laughs. Other media that I love, I like other art. I think one of my favorite movies of all time is Moonlight. Is that 2016? I love that film. It's shot so beautifully. I think like in terms of cinematography, that's gotta be like top five cinematography for me. And then like low-key hate Wes Anderson as like an animation director. But I Love Dogs is another, I think, in my letterbox top four. And then also like these are like films I like to draw inspiration from. But like again, like when I'm on art block and like I love and I want to like I don't know, like take my mind off of things. Like I'm a huge sitcom lover. Like I love I don't know, comedy sloth, so you'd call it. Like I've probably seen New Girl like 5 times at this point. I think that's like probably one of my favorite sitcoms. And then one last, I think, is there anything else I would totally recommend? I think one last media that is just like just like has such a hold on me that like I was so captivated by it is Takopi's Original Sin. It's this anime that came out this past year. It was really highly rated, but I feel like it wasn't as popular as like a bunch of the other ones that came out that season. But it's like the whole thing is like basically 2 hours 30 minutes long. It's like 6 episodes, and definitely like advisory warning, it gets really dark. But the story itself I thought was just like really captivating and made me cry.
Thank you so much. I'll have to look some of those up. Do we have any last words? Thank you so much for talking to us.
Of course, thank you guys for having me. I'm so honored to have been able to talk to you guys, and I'm really looking forward. Or if anyone wants to keep talking to me more, I'm here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.